This young man is a man from Cincinnati, Ohio, fishing with us for about 4 or 5 years. Nice welcome for Joe Thomas, Cincinnati, Ohio.
For nearly 40 years, I've made my living in the fishing industry. And not a day goes by that I don't realize how fortunate I am to have a chance to do something I love for so long. And now at this stage of my career, I look back and I think of the people who helped make me who I am today. And I have a real sense of gratitude that's hard to put into words. I'm Joe Thomas, and this is my story. And it's the story about the people who made me who I am today. And I really think the best way to tell you about who I am is to tell you who they were. And it all started with my dad, Jim Thomas. My dad really wasn't a fisherman. And as I was growing up, we didn't go fishing until I started to show a love for fishing. But when I got the bug, he would support that. And my mom would too, to the point where my dad literally joined a bass club so that I could be in the bass club. Yeah, when I started fishing, you had to be 18 to be in a bass club. They knew I wasn't 18, but because my dad was in the club and he was gonna be there and he was gonna basically hold my hand, so they thought, they allowed it to happen. I really think my dad was surprised at how I excelled at competitive fishing. You know, I think that let him know that he'd done the right thing, that it was a good path. But I also think that he realized that he might have created a monster when I walked in after 3 years of going to college and said, "Hey, Dad, I want to take off my final year of school and I want to take a stab at the pro circuit. I want to be a pro fisherman." Professional bass fishing was so much different back in the early 80s than it is now. I mean, back then you had one game in town, and that was the Bassmasters. And if you wanted to fish a Bassmaster event, the top level, the tour, all you had to do was pay a $300 entry fee. I really felt like I had what it took. I believed in myself. But what I didn't believe was the fact that Ray Scott would immediately take notice of me. And that was a big deal. In my opinion, there wouldn't even be professional bass fishing if it wasn't for one man, and that is Ray Scott. Ray is the founder of BASS. It was his brainchild. He was the promoter. He was the personality behind it. And he's what really drove people like me to want to be a part of it. He created heroes. Immediately, I knew that Ray saw something in me because he would always give me extra time on stage. He would always engage me. He would always try to bring me in. And he knew that I was struggling to make a living in a sport that I love. But he also knew that I had potential, or I don't think he would have spent the time with me. But the one Ray Scott story that I really remember the most, we were at La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I was struggling to try to make the Bassmaster Classic. It was the last tournament of the season, and I fell just a little short. And what no one knew was the fact that I didn't even have enough money to get home. But back in the day, they would give away a boat at the end of every event. They'd take all the fishermen, they would dump their names in a hat, and they would pull out 5 names, and they would literally, with Ray orchestrating it on stage like only Ray could do, they would basically pull the names out and eliminate one person at a time. Well, I was one of the 5. I remember this vividly, and this was one of those moments that will always stick with me, is we were down to 2, and Ray's thing was always to go back and forth between the 2 guys. You know, this is a $10,000 boat. How much would you give him right now for your spot? And basically he would run the guys. Well, I had no money. The guy that I was going up against had quite a bit of money, and he offered me $1,000 for my ticket. And I was just ready to take it. And Ray leaned over and he said, "Don't you dare take that $1,000. Legitimately, he drew my name. I won the boat. I was able to sell it right away, had the money to get home. And what I didn't realize is Ray was building a persona for me. He was trying to help me take that next step. And to have Ray Scott in my corner at that point in my career was gold. It was money. Another person that was a real influence in my fishing career was Tim Tucker. Tim was the senior outdoor writer at Bassmaster magazine, and I kind of knew when I had started to make it, when Tim started to come up to me and ask for quotes. But when he came to me with an idea of writing a book about the life of a bass pro, I thought it was a great idea, but I had no inkling that it would be about me. The fact that he chose me out of all the amazing anglers at that time to write Diary of a Bass Pro was a big step in my career. And basically what that book was me recording day-to-day life on the tournament trail. And at the end of the year, we put it together in one paper-bound book. And Diary of a Bass Pro was probably one of the best things that I ever did. I still to this day, 25, 30, however many years later, I still have people walk up with old dog-eared, well-worn copies of the book and asking me to sign it at a sports show. What it really did for me was it just kind of validated not only who I was, it personalized who I was to the fans, but it also validated me as a professional angler and someone that was established on the circuit. I think any sport, and competitive bass fishing is no different. The competitor in the sport, if they do it long enough, they're gonna kind of have that apex moment that they're always gonna go back and look at and say, that was when I really felt like I made it. And for me, awesome. It was the year 1990. In 1990, I qualified for the Bassmasters Classic, and I won what was at the time the largest payback in fishing. $100,000, I won the BFL All-American. Back in the day, it was called the Red Man All-American. But it was one of those events that was really looked at as one of the crown jewels of a career. And I was able to put that one in the bank in 1990. And believe it or not, the event that overshadowed those first two things that happened that year was the fact that I married my wife, Diane. And believe it or not, Ray Scott came to my wedding. Pretty good year, I think. I'm a big believer that opportunities get put in front of you. I think everything is meant to be. I think the good Lord has a plan. You say whatever you want, but I'm telling you that there was an exit strategy that literally fell in my lap. I get a call from an old buddy of mine, Bob Dillo. He had a show on Outdoor Channel, this brand new network had just started up. It was called the Buckeye Bass Man. So I said, heck yeah, man, I'll do it. Good promotion for me, get you a good TV show. We went up there and we knocked the show out in a couple of days. It was amazing. And months after I did this episode with Bob Dillo on Lake Erie, I get this box in the mail. And it's a VHS tape. And I opened it up and it's like I didn't even know what I was opening. And it said the Buckeye Bass Man, Joe Thomas, episode 11, Bob Dillo. And I'm like, oh, dude, the guys thought to send me an episode. And I plugged it in and I watched it and it was entertaining, it was fun. Fast forward maybe a month or two and I get a call from this small production company run by a guy named Jim Kramer. And he said, we've got Bob's thing going on Outdoor Channel. Would you ever consider doing some kind of a local TV show? And the first thing I said was, nope. I just didn't think that was my path. And, after thinking about it a little bit, I thought, it might be a way to promote myself and make a little bit of extra money. And I never dreamed that stepping into television and creating what became Steele's Reel in the Outdoors way back then was going to be morph into my exit strategy from competitive fishing.
Joe, let's go have some fun.
What you got in mind? So Jim and I start this local fishing show. And I think that's where we really felt like it was all going to stop. And I was okay with that because I'm a full-time tournament competitor. I've only got so much time, and it's a nice way to transition myself towards this TV thing if it ever comes together. Well, it came together completely by happenstance. I was in my garage, I was working, and garage doors open, and my wife comes to the door and she hollers at me. She said, "Hey, there's some guy called on the fax line." Remember, we had faxes back then. That's how far back I'm going. And so she hollers at me, and I'm like, yeah, what the heck? I walk all the way to the house, all the way up to my office, and I get on the phone, and the voice at the other end is Wade Sherman. He, at the time, was the senior VP of programming at this upstart network called Outdoor Channel. And we want a pro fisherman. Would you be interested? And I just thought, this is my golden opportunity to work with a network that is actually going to be a sponsor as well. And that was a pivotal moment. That was when my modern identity was born. And it actually ended up morphing into a TV show of its own that became very popular.
You know, this has been a great season with Angler on Tour, but one of the most frequently asked questions we've had along the way is, how did you get to where you are today?
Angler on Tour opened a lot of doors for me, but I do want to say that Angler on Tour was a really, really tough show to do because it was about my day-to-day life on the tournament trail. And let's face it, unless you're Rick Clunn or Kevin Van Dam or just a very select few, you're going to have more valleys in your week-to-week fishing than you are peaks. And basically being vulnerable and exposing your inner feelings when it was hard enough in a book, now to do it to a camera and show the ups and downs that really happen on the pro circuit, it was a tough one.
This is kind of one I like to get behind me. I limited again today. Very frustrating. You know, every day had its own little frustration.
It took a toll on me in a lot of ways, and it definitely increased the workload. But when things are going good, what do? You just keep pouring gas on the fire, and that's what we did. And that's right about the time frame when we decided that fishing needed a made-for-television competition show.
From Roland and Marianne Martin's Marina and Resort on Lake Okeechobee in Clewiston, Florida, I'm Joe Thomas, along with Fish Fishburne, and this is Ultimate Match Fishing.
We all got together and we basically put our heads together and developed this competition format made strictly for television, and it actually turned out to be our golden goose, and that is Ultimate Match Fishing. I mean, Ultimate Match Fishing is still airing today. It's as popular as it's ever been. And when it's that head-to-head format that puts anglers together, and it gave me a whole different role. I'm a tournament fisherman, now I'm a TV host, and now I'm a commentator on a tournament show. You can only spread yourself so thin. And I've said from the beginning that if you want to be the best tournament angler out there, you have to live, breathe, eat, and sleep tournament fishing. You don't think about anything else. But the real moment of truth for me, when I decided that it was time to hang up tournament fishing, was when my kids were ages 5 to 15. They'd seen Dad travel a lot, and that year, when I finally made the decision to retire from competitive fishing, I had been gone 264 days from home in that single year. Too much.
Sometimes it's difficult when my dad's not home and when he's gone, but really what I do to pass the time is call him on his cell phone or talk to him.
The decision to retire from pro fishing after nearly 30 years came with a ton of anxiety. I mean, being a pro bass fisherman, that was my identity. But my identity as a TV host and a commentator on Outdoor Channel, actually probably brought me more notoriety and more relevance than I had when I was fishing.
Look at that pig!
Do you hear that? That is the sound of peanut oil heating up on the grill. The one common theme across my entire career as a professional angler, as a TV host, and a producer is the fact that all of those things require sponsorships to make it work. Good stuff, man. But the one thing I will say is that after 30 years of doing this, it's pretty rare that a company or a product will actually rejuvenate my excitement like iKon has. Hey guys, I'm Joe Thomas, and I'd like to take a couple minutes and give you my first impression of my new iKon LX21. I mean, iKon not only builds an amazing boat, but the people that work for them have a passion, not just for boat building, but for the sport, and to make sure that they preserve the resource so that we can still go out there and do what we love and go fishing. And the bottom line is this: bass fishing TV hosts still get to go fishing, and I was never gonna give that up, and I didn't have to.
Okay, Joe, you put the thumping on me on the water, so it's been a great day. Now you come in the house and we'll get to the pool table and I'll put the thumping on you.
Fair enough. Folks, I'm Joe Thomas. Catch us next week on Reel In the Outdoors. Let's go.